All right, so let's take a look at strings. We'll start off talking about strings and characters. So what is a character? A character is essentially a string with a length of 1. And in some languages, you might actually treat this as a separate data type, but in JavaScript, characters are just strings. They're all of the string type, no matter how long they are. So strings can be analyzed in certain ways. And we're going to talk about that. Here's some examples of, separate strings. They're characters, but they're still strings, right? But when we concatenate them together, we still get one string. And of course, that is equal. So that evaluates to true. So a string is a collection of characters, right? But it's ordered sequentially from left to right. So it matters what order they're in. And because of that, we can't actually say, that A plus B is equal to BA. It doesn't work that way, right? You have to have them in the same order. So I'm going to, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go to the next slide and then we'll do a little bit of live coding. All right. So the length of a string can be determined. We're going to learn how to actually evaluate that in a second. But just to think about it conceptually, this is really important. When you are thinking about the length of a string, you're literally asking, how many characters do I have from start to finish? How many characters? And you want to make sure you include special characters, spaces, things like that. Those are all legitimate characters, so that contributes to the length. So I have this example, A, B, C, D, E. What's the length on that?
5.
Yeah, so we say that the length is 5 characters long. Similarly, hi there with an exclamation point and a space is going to be 9 characters long. And if we look at this decimal number, but it's a string, so we're storing it as a string and not really as a number, that's 6 characters long because the the decimal point counts, right? So that's the concept of length, but there's also this concept of indexing because we want to be able to keep track of what character is in what position within the string. We have to have an index. So that's the position, but strings are 0 indexed. This is a weird thing about the way computers do things that you have to get used to. And so you're going to have to just remember, we don't start off calling the first character character 1. We call it character 0. And so then from there, you can go through and, number these, right? From 0 forward. But that means that when you get to the last index, it's not the length. It's 1 less than the length because of the 0. So you might hear people say, if they're talking about multiple indexes or indices for the plural form. I tend to say indices, so you're probably going to hear me say that. It's a little more formal, but that's when I say that, I'm talking about multiple indexes. Okay, so back to our examples here, A, B, C, D, E, right? If I put up this little numbering here so you see that A is 0, and we go on all the way through to the end, and that makes E the 5th character. It's actually the 4th index. So again, that last index is always going to be less than the length because of the 0. So let's go through the next one. What would be the index? We could start out here at 0, right? What would be the index of the space?
2.
2, good. What would be the index of the R?
6.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. And then the index of the exclamation point?
8.
8, yeah. So again, the length is 9, but the last index is 8 because we started with 0. So you're going to have to get used to thinking this way. It's going to have to become natural to you to think this way about how you are identifying the position of characters within a string, because this is how the computer does it. And if you are thinking of starting with 1, the computer is going to give you a different result. Last one, what's the index of the 3?
1,
And the a decimal point?
3.
Yeah. And then of course that makes the 0, the last one,
5.
5. Right. 6 characters long, but the indices go from 0 to 5. Okay. So that's how that works. So let's go over and let's see, do I have, I thought I had something that was no, I guess we have one more slide. Okay. So if you want to be able to access a character by index and say, I want to get the value of a character at a certain index, we can do that with something called bracket notation. So the index number goes inside the brackets, and we will use it, you can use it on a string directly, but you're probably going to be mostly using it on a variable that has a string value. And then when you evaluate that expression, it's going to return the character at that index. So here we have a variable. First name is Oliver. I have a nephew named Oliver, so that's why I chose that. He's really awesome. And then first name at index 2 is how we would do this. So I've got these square brackets. I put the index in here and I attach it here at the end of the variable name. That's the syntax. And we say that first name at index 2. If you're wondering how to pronounce it, that's how you do it. So first name at index 2, what's that going to evaluate to?
I,
Great. Yeah. 0, 1, 2, right? What about first name at index 4?
E,
Yeah, it's going to be E because we've got that indexing from 0 to 5 here. Great. Okay, and again, in case you didn't catch that, we say this first name at index 3. That's how that's pronounced. So as you're talking about your code, one of the things that you have to work on as you're learning to code is how to talk about it, because you're talking about it with your classmates, you're talking about it with your IAs, and ultimately you'll be talking about it possibly with interviewers and coworkers. And so learning the lingo is going to be important, but it takes practice. So just kind of keep practicing. All right. One more thing, we're going to talk about this concept of immutability. We say that strings are immutable. So what does that mean, actually, right? It means that you can't update a string's value just by assigning a single character, like a new character at a specific index with something like bracket notation. It just doesn't work. So I could say I have these initials JT, and in my parents' generation, we're thinking, oh, James Taylor, right? But let's say, we're with, I forget who it was that was the proud Justin Bieber, fan. But let's say we need to change that second one to be, right? And we think, oh, well, we'll just reassign, use, bracket notation to reassign just that character with, at index 1, like this with the assignment operator, right? That cannot be done because strings are not mutable that way. So instead, what you have to do is you have to actually find a way to reassign the entire variable using the original value of the variable. So we could come here and actually update it. Um, and yeah, so if we evaluate initials after this, it's still going to be JT. Sorry, I didn't realize I still had that on there. Okay, so if we want to do this, we can just replace that previous value, build a new string, and then just reassign it. So I've got initials equals initials at index 0 here, plus B. So concatenation here is going to be a very common approach to do this for something as simple as this. So now if I've done this, initials is going to evaluate as what?
JB.
JB, that's what we're going for. Okay, good. So just remember that with strings, you can't use this to update a single character. You have to just reassign the entire variable. All right, who has questions about what I've done so far? And I am going to live code some examples of this.
Okay. So there seems to be a little bit of confusion over the most recent example with how initials at index 0 plus B creates JB. Is that what you're saying, Ricky? Okay.
Yeah, okay. So if we go up here to the original value of initials here, it's JT. And if we talk about the index of each of those characters so that we can identify their positions, this is 0 and this is 1, right? So we're saying we want to build a new string that actually is JB instead of JT. So we can go and reference the original value and say, let's just go get the character that's at index 0, which is that J, and we'll concatenate it together with the B, and J plus B is going to give us the string JB. Does that help?
Seems to be good.
Okay, yeah. I know this is a lot of new syntax and but it's fundamental. So that's why we're going to spend so much time on it today. Okay, good. So let me do a couple examples here, and then if there's any more questions, we can do it. I've got a variable called the last time lord, and it says the doctor, which with spaces and misspellings, and it's all messed up, right? Really jacked up. So we're going to need to fix it. We're going to do that over the course of this the series of exercises a little bit at a time, and use different methods of changing the value of strings to fix it a little bit at a time. Okay, for now, let's just use bracket notation to print the first character of that first word. And give me just a second here. I lost my, yeah, there we go. Okay, so I can just print the last time Lord and go to index 1, the first character of the first word. You'll notice there's a space there, so I have to count that. So I'm actually looking at index 1 to get that capital T. Okay. And if I see, I'm in chapter 7. Notice I've already got my, I ran my npm install and I've got the things I need later. We're going to do a little bit of user input. So I've got all that in place. Okay, so I'm going to node strings here. And we're going to see the T. Great. Okay. And then we'll use bracket notation to print the first character of the last word. So I can do the same thing, console.log, the last time Lord. And here I'm just going to need to count for a second. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? To get to that capital D. First character of the last word. Yeah, it's 5. I think I have a mistake in my solution. I'll have to fix that. Okay. Okay, so we get the T and we get the D. So we're good. Let's see if we can fix those mistakes, and we're just going to try to mutate it. We're going to see if that's possible, right? So I could try, the last time Lord and say, we need to fix that, the A at index 3. So what if I were to just try to use bracket notation to change that to an E? And what if I were to try to do that again and take maybe this space out of here and change that? Oh, no, not the space, to remove the K. We're going to try to remove the K and just change it to an empty string. If I go and I log this value now to see if it's changed, it has not changed. You'll notice this did not produce an error. JavaScript allowed us to try this, and it didn't produce an error, but it doesn't work. So if you think you can do this to change a string, it's not going to work, right? So we're going to need to find other ways to fix this, and we will do that as we go through. Okay. Any last questions before I move on?
Seem to be good.
Okay. Let's talk about strings as an object, because there's a lot of powerful things that you can learn about a string or do with a string because JavaScript has all this stuff built in behind the scenes. So it's not really just a sequence of characters. It has properties, it has methods. And a property is something, when we get to chapter 13, I think. When we talk about objects more, you're going to understand a little bit deeper about what I mean when I say properties and methods, but I'll give you the highlights. A property is just a stored value. It's some piece of information about an object. In this case, the main property that we look at for a string is its length, right? We can always go get that piece of information. A method is a stored function. It's some sort of mechanism that has some code to execute. And when you go and you call that method, it's going to execute the code. But keep in mind, because strings aren't mutable, it's not going to automatically update the string for you. You would have to get the value that you use the method for and reassign it to the string. So we'll do lots of examples of this. So we're gonna, yeah, again, oh, it's chapter 12. We'll talk more about objects in chapter 12. That's right. 13 is modules. Okay. String variable, so let's say we have a variable, it's called name and it has a string. We could go to name.length to get the property, and that's going to return a number. And that's that piece of information that's attached to it that's available to us. So anytime we want to find out the length, we can do that. And then the methods, we're going to learn a bunch of methods. I'm going to go through them one at a time. Index of, to find out, I know I have a character I want to find. What index is it at? We can go look that up. If I want to change the entire string to be lowercase instead of mixed case or uppercase, I can use two lowercase, et cetera, et cetera. We can, trim the spaces off the ends of things. So, so many different things we can do that are going to help us change strings the way we need them to be. That entire thing is the string object that has all that capability built in JavaScript. So let's look closer at the length property. You can attach .length to any string to get a character count. There is no parentheses after .length in JavaScript because it's just a property. It's not a method. You don't have to call. It's not a function you're going to call. It's just a piece of information that's already stored, and all we have to do is go get it. So let's say we have a dessert and it's pie. If I were to go evaluate dessert.length, what would I get?
3.
3. Good. Okay. Let's say we decide to have another variable that concatenates some things together. We've got key plus lime. If I get fruit.length, what am I going to see?
I've got 2 different answers. I've got someone said 7 and someone said 8.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's 8 because of the space. You'll notice there's a space here between the Y and the end of that quote, right? And spaces always count as a character and they contribute to that length. So the only thing that has a length of 0 is an empty string. So yeah, so we have a length of 8. So let's say, yeah, 4 plus 4. We go to put all this together even further. Let's say I try to evaluate fruit plus another space plus dessert. What is that length going to be?
12.
Excellent. Yes, because we have the 8, we have a space, and we have the 3, and all of that is 12. And of course, it spells out key lime pie, right? We put it all together. Okay, so that's how length works. That's all you have to do. And again, the way to say this is fruit.length. You pronounce the period as a dot. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of examples here. Let's declare a new variable. We're going to get back to fixing the doctor's name, but for now we're going to say let Dalek war cry, and it's going to be exterminate, right? You have any Doctor Who fans in the house? I hope.
There's
Yeah.
a couple.
Couple who's okay. So let's use the length here. Oh, I can print the length first. Let's just print the length. Yeah. And then we'll use the length to help us do something. So if I just print that variable dot length, we get 12. Okay. So this is 12 characters long. Great. If we want to be able to store the index of the last character, how might I go about calculating that? Using the length. Any guesses?
Length -1.
Good. Yeah, you remember because of zero indexing, the last index is always one less than the length. So this is going to be something you can always do if you just need to go get, real quick, you need to go find out what is the last index of the string, just subtract one from the length. So I will print that. Okay. And we get 11. Perfect. So now let's use bracket notation and the variable we created to print the last character of the string. We have the index, we have the original string, right? So if I say console log, let's go to Dalek Warcry and use bracket notation, I can just pass in now that number 11 that's stored in last index. And we should see that exclamation point. That's the very last character. And there it is. Okay, these kind of operations are going to help you when you are trying to accomplish a number of things. And as I do more examples, it'll become more evident, especially when we start doing things like loops. But this is how you kind of you use something like the length property and storing things in variables and using index with bracket notation to access the value of a character at a specific position to help you get things done. These are the basics. All right, let's talk about some common string methods. I'm going to introduce these one by one in a minute, but I wanted to give you a single slide where you kind of have all of them to look at in one place. There's a whole list of things that we're going to talk about that are where you are creating a modified string from an original string to uppercase, to lowercase, trim, replace something old with something new. And then there's going to be a method where you can actually go locate a substring in a string. You could do includes and just say, can you find this character or this substring in the string, true or false? Or index of, tell me where I can find the character or the substring. And then we also can create a new string from a substring by taking a slice of a string from one index to another. So we're going to cover each of these a little bit at a time. I want to talk first, again, just about vocabulary, about talking about these things. So again, with methods, it is a function that's stored, and you need to know kind of how to talk about it. So let's say you've got a string, some string, that's your object. We're going to call the method replace, and we're going to pass in some parameters. So old and new are called parameters. That's when you have just a definition. They're placeholders for something. And so this would be the correct syntax, and this would be how we talk about each of the parts. But when we go to actually use it, there's going to be a little bit of different terminology. So let's say we have alpha equals A, B, Z, D, E, and we say that's not supposed to be a Z, it's supposed to be a C. So we reassign a new string to alpha and say, let's take alpha and just replace the Z with a C. If we do that, we actually call the Z and the C here arguments. Those are the actual real values that are accepted for each of these parameters up here that are defined as part of this method. So if you hear these terms floating around, parameters versus arguments, this is the distinction. This is just, how we talk about them in general terms. We call them arguments when we have real values that we're passing in. Okay. So you're going to hear me use a lot of these terms. You call a method, you pass in arguments, and you'll get used to this. And when we talk about functions next week in chapter 10, you're going to hear all of this again because you're going to learn how to write functions for yourself, and you'll start using this even more. Okay. So we'll get to some of the common string methods. The very first one's easy, 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase, right? They do exactly what you think they do. You just attach them to a string to change their case, and that will call that method. You don't have to pass anything in. You can just leave the parentheses empty. And then just remember that string methods return a new string. They do not change the original string. So you can call the method, but then you need to take that value and reassign it or assign it to a new variable. So let's look at a sequence of things here that we can do to make this happen. Let's say I've got happy equals woohoo and ecstatic equals happy to uppercase. I had another bullet point. Okay, here we go. Once I have done that, I've taken happy and attached to uppercase, and I'm taking the result of that evaluation of that expression and storing it in ecstatic. What am I going to see for ecstatic?
Woohoo in all caps.
Yeah, so it's not just woohoo, it's woohoo, right? It's a big woohoo. All right. So if I go now and I check the value of happy, what am I going to see?
Woohoo in lowercase.
Yeah, the original yoo-hoo, woohoo, right? So that's exactly how that works. And it's not going to change the original one when you attach it. It only brings back a new value that you then have to do something with. And you can reassign it to the original thing if you want to, or you can assign it to something else. So let's take a look at an example of this. All right, so we have two variables here. We have get a move on as allons-y, and when we have time description, which is wibbly wobbly timey wimey. Okay, so we're going to print get a move on in all caps. And so we'll say console.log get a move on to uppercase. All right, and make sure you'll notice that before I added the parentheses, it was like, oh, are you trying to call a property, right? As soon as I add the parentheses, it says, oh yeah, you're trying to call a method. So make sure you put those on there or else you will not get the return value you're expecting. So I can print that, but then I need to see, what happened to get a move on when I do this. Okay, so if I print get a move on to uppercase, I am just evaluating that in place and printing it, but then nothing happens after that. And then if we go check the original variable, it's still what it originally was, allons-y. So we have a proof here that the string is not mutated, but we did get the result we were looking for when we evaluated that. Let's do the same thing here with time description, but this time we're going to make it all lowercase. So I'm going to say time description dot to lowercase. And then we'll print the original time description just to verify that it has not changed. All right, so we get wibbly wobbly timey wimey in lowercase, and then we see the original one when we go back and look at that. Okay, so I evaluated them, but I didn't really save them in any way. I didn't reassign them or save them in a new variable, so they're just kind of lost to time, so to speak. Okay, trim and replace. Let's talk about trim and replace. Trim will let you take a string and then it will return a new value that does not have any leading or trailing spaces. Replace actually will return a new string that has certain characters swapped out. But there's a key to this. It's only going to do it the first time it finds it. It's not going to do any, like if it has multiple ones of the same letter, it's only going to change the first one it finds. So keep that in mind. So we have a string here, hello. It's got some leading spaces and some trailing spaces. So I can call string.trim, but it's not going to update string unless I reassign it here. So then I say string now needs to take the value of string.trim. So if I do that, string is going to be what?
Hello with no spaces.
Right. Because we reassigned it. We actually did use that method of updating it by reassigning it. Okay. And if I go string at index 0, I get
H.
lowercase h. That's right. What about string at index 0 to uppercase?
Capital H.
Yeah. Okay. So you're starting to see how we can put some of the syntax together to get different results, right? Let's look at this one. We're going to take string and we're now going to replace some things. So I'm going to say I want to go to a character that's at index 0 and I want to replace it with that same character to uppercase. is string going to be now?
Hello with a capital H.
Yeah, exactly. We went and we swapped out for the lower H, we swapped out the uppercase H and we replaced it. And then we reassigned it so that the string is now updated, because just doing that alone is not enough to update the string. We have to reassign it. Good. All right, we're gonna do a couple examples of this. So you remember that the last Time Lord up here is all jacked up. So we're gonna fix it. We've got some leading and trailing spaces. We've got a letter or two that we can replace and fix. So let's come do that. I'm gonna take the last Time Lord, an existing variable, and reassign it to the last Time Lord dot trim. And then we'll console log it to prove that the reassignment has saved it exactly as we expected it to. Yeah, so we can now see there's no leading space here, and there's also no trailing spaces. You can't really see it in the console, but they're not there. Trim took care of it. So we can change that A here to an E by referencing it. And so but this, I don't even need to go look up the index really. I can just say, hey, can you go take that A and change it to an E? Because it's the very first A it comes across, so it's going to find it. And I'm tripping because that's not what I meant to do. All right. The last Time Lord, we're going to reassign it to the last Time Lord dot replace. And that's what we're going to pass in is the A and the E, and just say, go find that first A you come across, change it to an E. And now when we check the value of the last Time Lord, we get the doctor instead of the doctor. So we're getting there. We still have some things to fix, but we're gonna continue learning about some new things before we do that. Okay, what if you want to locate characters within a string and find out, is it there at all? Can you just tell me whether that's there or not, true or false? Or can you tell me exactly where it's located? What's its position? Includes, and then you give it a character or a substring, that'll return Boolean true or false. It'll either find it or it won't. Index of, and notice there's a capital O there, right? This is camel case. Index of is a method that you call on the string, and it will return the number. It'll return that index wherever it finds it. If it's a substring if it's not just a single character and it's a substring that has multiple characters, it'll give you the index of the first character. So, it still works for that. However, if it can't find anything, it's going to return -1. Because it doesn't return true or false, it returns a number. So the way they have it worked out is if it returns -1, that's how you tell, oh, I couldn't find it, it's not there. So yeah, and it's only going to return the very first index it comes across. Kind of like replace, it just stops looking once it finds it. So we have let genius equal Albert Einstein. If I say genius dot includes, and I pass in the character B, what am I going to get?
True.
True, right. Includes just returns true or false. It's just a way of finding out if it's even there. If I say genius dot includes X,
False.
okay. How about genius dot index of and the letter E?
Hearing a little louder, please. 4.
Close.
Close. 3. There we go.
Yeah, because of the zero indexing. I know it takes a while to get used to thinking this way, right? But you have to start counting with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, what about the index of Z?
-1.
-1. Yep. So as you can imagine, now that you've learned how to do conditionals, there's going to be times when you're going to decide, I want my code to do different things depending on whether I, find something or, or not. Or maybe I, am trying to find an index of something to use it for something else. And this kind of thing comes in real handy for doing that kind of logic. All right, let's do a couple examples. We're going to go find characters within a string. So let's look to see if there's a T in the last Time Lord. I'm just going to console log the last Time Lord dot includes and pass in T. Run it. And it says true, it found it. Let's go get the index of that K that's been problematic for us. So I'll say let extra letter equal the last Time Lord dot index of, and then find me that K that's not supposed to be there. And then we can print that and say, what did we find? Did we find the K? Or sorry, did we get the right index? Yeah, so it's at index 7, which, looks about right. It's right there, right? So there are different ways that we can go about making good use of this, of finding the index and then updating the value of the string by having that knowledge of exactly where it's located. One of those is slice. So if you want to create a new string from a substring, then you can use slice. You give it the index of the very first character that you're going for. And then this parameter here, end +1, it basically means whatever the last character is that you want, you actually want to pass in the number after that. Because you want to pass in the number that it's not going to include, but then you want everything up to that point. So it's going to return a substring, and then you can do whatever you want with that. You can put it in a new variable, or you can reassign it, however you want to do it. And start, again, is that first character to include, and +1 is the index after the last character to include. And bonus feature here, they let you actually just have a single parameter if you want. If you want to use slice and just pass in a single number, it's just going to basically say, I just want to go get everything from that index all the way to the end of the word. I don't even need to go find out what the very last index of the word is. Just give me from here on out, right? So we've got let org equal launch code, which is a mistake because it's not supposed to have a space. So we're going to go find the index of the space so that we can operate on this and fix it. So I'll say, let's go to org and get the index of the space and store that in this variable space index. IDX is a abbreviation you're going to see for index sometimes. So IDX. So if I evaluate space IDX now, I'm going to get 6. That's the location of that space. I can work with that. So now I know where I want to split this so that I can make sure to get the pieces together that I want and fix this and reassign it with the correct value. So I can concatenate the first part I want and the second part I want and use this as the place to cut it off. So if I wanted to get just the launch part without the space, what 2 values would I pass into slice here?
0, 6.
Yeah, and because I actually have saved this in a variable, I can use the name of the variable to reference it. Because if you keep in mind, if you're executing this code, the program isn't going to be able to look at this like you can and say, oh, that's at 6. You have to have gone and looked it up and saved it for it, right? So in this case, I've done this because I'm going to use it twice. So if I want to slice everything from, just the code to get from C to the end, I can just pass in what?
7.
Yeah.
What you said?
How would I do that in terms of space IDX?
Space IDX +1.
Yeah. So it's absolutely necessary in this case. I mean, if I wanted to skip storing it in a variable, I could do that, but I'd have to do this expression instead twice, right? Org.index of space, org.index of space. But in this case, I decided I'm going to use that twice. Why don't I just store it in a variable? It's a little bit easier to read now. But that's the concept, is you can actually piece together, strings in different ways by finding a character that you want to use as a breaking point and using that to go get just the substrings you want. Okay, so let's do another example of this. thing here. Okay, so we're going to use slice to get rid of that K, that very pesky K that we went and we looked it up already. We know where the extra letter is now stored. So I can say, I'm going to take the last Time Lord and reassign this new value. I'm going to go there. I'm going to take a slice and get just the first part that I want from 0 up to, but not including that extra letter. I want everything up to the K, but not including the K. And then I can concatenate everything after that. So I can say, let's take another slice and go to extra letter +1 so that we actually start with the character that's after the K. And now, because I've updated the value of the last Time Lord by reassigning it, we should see it just how it's supposed to be, the doctor, no K. Okay, so we, little bit by bit, we fixed this string using some different methods. All right. Last string topic is, oh, I had more stuff on my slide, but I think we're gonna have to move on here. Yeah, if I try now to go and look for the index of that space, it's going to return -1 because it's no longer there now that I've reassigned it and updated it. That's all I was doing here. Okay, let's talk about template literals. Up until now, you've been creating strings using double quotes and single quotes, right? There's a special syntax called a template literal where you can use backticks. Now that's that key that's up there at the top left near your escape key on your keyboard, on the same key as the tilde, the little, squiggly line. So that's what you want to use to open and close it. And then you don't need to concatenate anything. You can actually just write the string in a very natural format, which is much easier to read than when all the little bits and pieces are broken up with all those operators, right? So you just want to replace the parts of the string that you need to evaluate some JavaScript with these placeholders. And it use a $sign and 2 curly braces, opening and closing. And then any JavaScript to be evaluated goes between that. And it will allow you to just insert the final result of that evaluation in that spot in the template literal. So you may hear this terminology thrown around at some point. This process of adding data in place like that with a placeholder is called string interpolation. So if you hear that, that's what we're talking about. Template literals are string interpolation. So let's say we have fave author is Agatha Christie, and I create a sentence that says, I love reading mysteries by. This entire thing is the template literal from backtick to backtick. What would I put in this placeholder if I want it to say, I love reading mysteries by Agatha Christie?
Save author.
Yeah, I just put the variable in there. And because I have that placeholder syntax, it can evaluate JavaScript between those curly braces. Okay, but it's very easy to read, right? A lot easier than if you start having lots of plus signs and separate quotes and things. So we get the final sentence. I love reading mysteries by Agatha Christie. All right. So we're going to do a little some examples here. We've got some companions, Rose, Martha, and Donna. And the variables that are their first name store their full names. Rose Tyler, Martha Jones, Donna Noble. I have 3 quotes, oi, and then I have the first 19 years of my life. There's a mistake there. Nothing happened, nothing at all, not ever. And then I met a man called the doctor. And then the third one is all of space and time he promised me. So we need to use template literals to combine the correct quote with the correct character so that they come out formatted like this. And here's an example of a quote from the master. I am the master and you will obey me. And then we have a hyphen and another space and then the name of the person. So we're going to need, of course, to print this. So I'll start with console log. And now in here, we can create our template literal. So I start with backticks and I'm going to create, and you'll notice, this is the other great thing about backticks. You can use quotes and apostrophes and single quotes, however you need to, and it doesn't mess up the syntax because JavaScript's only paying attention to the backticks at that point. So notice that this formatting here, I want the quote in quotes. So I can actually do that. I can say I want quotes, but then between the quotes is where I need to actually put the variable. So I'm going to create a placeholder there. And then I'm going to put my hyphen, and then I'm going to have another placeholder for the person who said it. And that's it. So let's say we're going to do quote one. Does anybody know who quote one is?
Donna.
Donna, absolutely. Classic Donna. Okay. And then we can do this again. And I actually could copy this if I wanted to. So I could say, let's do quote two and quote three. Okay, who is quote two?
Rose.
It's Rose, yeah. That makes quote three, Martha. Okay, so let's run that, see how it comes out. Okay, good. So we have nicely formatted quotes. Oi, Donna Noble, et cetera, et cetera. And we did all of that with very simple syntax that's easy to read. We can evaluate the JavaScript right there with those placeholders. It's very nice. Okay. Let's add readline sync. And again, normally you put this at the very top of your file, but I'm going to do it right here just because we're doing all these examples. I'm going to require readline sync. And now we have the readline sync library represented by input, which is an object. So we can use that and call the question method on input. But as you may remember, if we just do input a question and that value comes back from the console, we have to have somewhere for it to go. So I'm going to create a variable and say, let first name equal, and we'll do input.question and say, please enter your first name. And I'm using some escape characters here to give us some extra lines and put the response on the next line. So we can do that. We can run it. And, I'll put Carrie. Okay. So the thing is, the user may not give you their name formatted the way you need it to be to use it in your application. They might have all caps or lower caps like Amy and Rory, or maybe they accidentally put a space in front of it or something. So your code will need to anticipate fixing any issues that come in. And this is where some of these string methods are really useful. So you have to think through what order you want to do these modifications in. And there's more than one way to do it. Excuse me. For one thing, if, sorry, give me a second. If we have spaces, leading or trailing spaces, then what method are we going to use for that?
Dot trim.
Yeah. So I will take first name and I will reassign it to first name dot trim. Okay. And then I could do, first name and what if everything was in uppercase and I just need it all to be lowercase?
First name dot to lowercase.
Right. Okay, that makes sure that all of the characters are to lowercase, but then we say, okay, but we still want the very first letter to be uppercase, right? So we could go through and we could do that. And we could say, like one way to do this would be to use replace, right? There's multiple ways to do this. I'll do it this way first, and then we'll do it a different way. So I'll say, we're going to replace, and all we know at this point is that it's trimmed, it's lowercase. So we can use the rest of the string. It's just the very first character that we need to fix. So now that we've trimmed it, because we did that first, we can guarantee that the very first letter is going to be the first letter of the name. So I can actually just go to first name and say, give me the character at index 0 and make that one to uppercase, right? And then I can concatenate. Oh, no, I'm replacing, sorry. And then I can replace, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I forgot what I was doing. I'm going to do it the other way in a second. First name at index 0, we're going to go find the character at index 0, and then we're going to replace it with that same character to uppercase. Okay. And then I can print a greeting with the name. And this is a very useful thing when you have like a website or something, right? And you're trying to greet somebody. So I'll say hello, use a placeholder, and say first name. And because we've already done all these operations, it should look exactly the way we want it to. So we can test this. Like let's say I put my name in all caps. It fixes it. Hello, Carrie, the way it's supposed to be. Let's say I do it again, and I do like, leading and trailing spaces. And I do, wonky, that's not going to work. There we go. Leading and trailing spaces. Okay. It fixes it. Okay, because we used all of these string methods to keep fixing it and reassigning it until it finally is what we need it to be. Okay, I said there was another way to do this. We could, for this line, also for this line and this line, we could replace these lines just by doing a concatenation. So we've trimmed it. We could say, okay, go to first name and get the very first character now that it's been trimmed and just make that to uppercase. And then we'll add on the rest of the word. And if we want to go ahead and just get that whole substring, we can use slice and just say, let's just get from index 1 to the rest of the word to the very end. So I'll just give it 1 and then make sure all of those are lowercase. Okay. And we'll take the first letter to uppercase, the rest of the word to lowercase, and concatenate it together. I can show that it still works. Yeah, it still works. So you have options on how you want to solve something. There is not like one correct way or one preferred way to do this. You just have different ways to do this. So you can get creative when you're solving some of your exercises and different problems that you've got and just pick a way that works and do it. Okay, anybody got any questions about these last few things I talked about before we take our break?
Megan? So Megan is asking about finding not the first instance of a letter, like using includes, is that kind of it? But if you wanted to find maybe the second or the third, how
Yeah.
would you go about doing that?
You would need to loop over the word character by character, and that's something that we're going to talk about on Monday.
Okay.
And there's also something very more advanced than we're even going to teach you in this course called regular expressions, where you can actually give it an expression and say, just go find like globally all of the instances of this particular character or whatever. But we're not even going to teach that to you guys. It's more advanced. You can learn it after you leave here.
Anyone else? Looks like a no.
Okay. All right, let's take our 5-minute break and we come back. We will do arrays, chapter 8. See you in a few. Let's talk about arrays. So arrays are ordered lists, just like strings are ordered characters. So talk about that. How you can use bracket notation, the concept of mutability, because while strings are not mutable, arrays are. We'll talk about the array as an object, its length property, a bunch of the common array methods, and then this concept of method chaining so that you can get a lot of things done in one line instead of having to do them on multiple lines. And then the last thing we'll talk about is multidimensional arrays. What happens when you have arrays inside of arrays? How would you, access those values? All right, so an array has, a very specific structure. It is a data structure. It's your very first data structure. So it's a collection of data. It's a list specifically, and it uses these square brackets to define it. Every single piece of data within the array, separated by commas, is called an element. So a JavaScript array can hold multiple data types. There are languages where you can't do that, but JavaScript lets you put multiple data types in the same array. And so here we have an example of an array with 3 elements, all strings, tulip, rose, and zinnia. Rose is an example of a single element. Now we have an example of one where we have a string, a number, a Boolean, they're all in the same element, and that's, excuse me, the same array, and it's perfectly legal. So much like we were structuring, looking at the structure and positioning of characters within strings, with an array, you're looking at the elements. How many elements does an array have? That's the length. You can actually make an array grow or shrink by adding or removing elements from it, and we're going to learn some methods for that. And just like strings, arrays are zero index. The very first element is at index 0. Arrays are ordered, but they're not necessarily sorted. You could have things in it that are not alphabetical or not in numeric order. We'll learn how to sort alphabetically in a little bit. So here's an array of a bunch of random numbers, and you can see that they are in index order, right? From 0 all the way to 7. And that means, of course, that it has a length of 8. So if you want to create an array for the very first time, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can initialize it as an empty array. Just use the brackets and don't put anything in there and add stuff later. Or you can actually initialize it with some elements in place. So it just depends on what you need to do. Generally speaking, the variable you want to use to name the array should be a plural noun because it's a list of things, right? So I wouldn't call this let car. I would call it let cars. Or, veggie, I'd call it veggies. So typically a good idea just to do it that way, have a plural noun that indicates what's being stored in the array. And you can use bracket notation to access different elements in different positions. So you would do it similar to the way you do it with a string, where you just give the name, the variable name of the array, and then a number that is between the brackets to refer to a specific element at a specific position. But strings are mutable. Sorry, I said that backwards. Unlike strings, arrays are mutable. It means you can actually use bracket notation to update the value. We tried doing that with a string. It did not work, but it does work with arrays. So if I have plays and I have Othello and Romeo and Juliet, and then I just say, oh, I need to update this because we're actually going to do Othello and King Lear. So I can update this and just change out Romeo and Juliet by changing the element at index 1 to be King Lear. And so, at first I might go and say, okay, plays at index 1 is Romeo and Juliet, right? As soon as I change it, if we go look at plays now, we should have an array that has Othello and King Lear because I swapped out the value. I mutated it and just changed the one element. What if you wanted to add something? Could you do that? Could you just give an index and just say, hey, I want a new value at a new index that didn't exist before? You can do that. So let's say I say plays at index 2 needs to have the value of Hamlet. That's a new element. If I go and I check plays now, what am I going to see?
Othello, King Lear, and Hamlet.
Yeah, I'll see all 3 of them. We now have an index 2 in addition to the original 2 elements. So this is one way that you can add things or update things with bracket notation. It's probably more common to use some of the methods we're going to teach you, but just so you know, you can do it this way. Okay, so one of the questions you might ask is, why would you not declare just the variable name? Like, why do you need to actually set it up as, have empty brackets if you want to create an array without any elements? So the problem is, while it's valid to declare it that way, the value and the type are undefined. JavaScript has no idea what that variable is supposed to be. For all it knows, you intend to use that variable for a string or for a Boolean or something. So if you just say let books, JavaScript does not know that that's supposed to be an array. And then, of course, that means you can't add items to an array that doesn't actually exist, right? It doesn't know what to do with that. So if I were to try this and just say, let's create books here, I need to actually make it an empty, have an empty array and set it equal, store that empty array in it. If I do it this way, we try and go look at books and it's just going to give us this value undefined. It doesn't know what it is. But, and if I try to do this, we'll get a type error the minute we try to do that. So, like I showed you on the previous slide, we can just create an empty array instead. Let's do some examples. I'm going to switch over here to chapter 8. Okay. We have an array already created for us here with a number of different elements in it. And apologies, give me a second. Forgot to switch my files. Here we go. Okay, we want to use bracket notation to print the second element of the array, remembering that arrays are actually 0 index. So it might be the second element, but it's not at index 2. So I can say console.log and just go to enemies and print the element at index 1 to be the second element. We can print that. And we get Cybermen. Okay, just as expected. That's the second one in the array. Okay, because this is mutable, we can actually fix this one, the ones in the library, because no one can ever remember what they're called. Does anybody know?
Bashta Narada.
Nice, good. Somebody knows their Doctor Who. Okay,
Hi, it's me.
that was you. Yeah, okay. So enemies at index 2 can now be changed. We can mutate the array and just say we're going to have the Vashta Narada. Good. And if I go now and check the value of the array, we're going to see the entire array with all 4 values, but instead of seeing the ones in the library, we have Vashta Narada. Good. Okay. What if I want to add a new element to the array? Just using bracket notation, but I don't know how many elements are in the array. I could actually just use the length to set the new index, right? Because we know that the length is always 1 more than the last index. So I could just say, I want to go to enemies and use enemies.length as the new index number that does not yet exist and say the master, definitely a major enemy. Okay, and now if I go check enemies, we should have 5 items in our array because we already had indices 0, 1, 2, and 3, but we had 4 items, so I used the length to put something in index 4 as the 5th item. Okay. Let's create an empty array. So this is what I was talking about before, where you can't just say let allies like this. You have to actually create an empty array before you can put things in it. Now JavaScript knows what it is. It knows what you're trying to do. And this will be perfectly legal. So I'm going to set them one at a time and say, Captain Jack Harkness is an ally. Put a space there. And I've got 3 more for the sake of time, because I'm not sure how much time I'm going to need to finish this. I'm going to just paste them. Okay. So at indices 1, 2, and 3, we have Harriet Jones, Kate Stewart, and Queen Victoria. And we can add all of those one at a time. And now we go to console log allies. We have an array that has all 4 of those exactly in the positions we told them to be in. Okay. What do you think is going to happen if I try to print an element from the allies array at index 10? Anybody know?
I think I heard someone say undefined
Okay.
or -1.
Yeah, it's undefined because right now the array only has just those 4 elements at indices 0 through 3. So there is nothing there, and JavaScript doesn't have any sort of placeholder for that. So it's just going to be undefined. Okay. Let's talk about this length property. This is going to work very similar. Does anybody have any questions before I do that, before we talk about properties and methods?
Looking like a no.
Okay. All right. So this is going to look real similar to how we talked about the string because it is. The array is an object. It has properties and methods. Again, a property is just a stored value. It's not a function. It's just a piece of information. A method is a stored function that actually will execute some code and change something, return some sort of value. And the difference here between arrays and strings is that because arrays are mutable, we're going to learn some array methods, quite a few, that actually just alter the original array. And maybe they also return a value. It can actually do two things at once. And then the array is just altered, boom. So without you having to do some sort of reassignment or whatever. So again, let's say we have an array called items that holds a bunch of items, right? It's an object. We can get the length, that'll return a number. We can go find out what the index of a certain element is, or we can find out, does an element even exist with includes? These are methods that you recognize already because they also exist for string. We have a join method where we can actually connect things together and create a string from an array. So there's lots and lots of them. I will give you a list of those in a minute when we get to talking about the methods. But for now, let's just talk about length, just to reiterate how this works. You can attach length to any array and get the count of the number of elements in that array. There is no parentheses after length because it's a property, it's not a method. So let's say I have this array decor, plant, vase, photo frame. What's the length of that going to be?
3.
3, yeah. Let's say I have veggies, and currently it holds potatoes and onions. And then I say veggies at index 2 is peas. What's the length going to be now?
3.
3. Yeah, because these exist at 0 and 1, which means if we go put something in at 2, it's just adding another one on. It's not replacing anything. So yeah, so it's now going to have all 3 vegetables. Okay. Do a quick example of this. Let's print the length of the array of allies. So I'm just going to say allies.length.
Hold on real quick, Carrie. We got a question. Say one
Oh.
more time. Would the code not work if the quotes are not around onion?
Yeah, that would break it. I'll fix that on the slide. Thanks for noticing that. It would not be valid syntax. Yeah, thanks
Is
for.
everybody missing their AirPods?
Okay, so we run the file and we get 4. So the length of allies is currently 4. So we can actually, again, calculate the index of the very last element in the array using length and just say, I want to actually print that element. So I'm going to go to the enemies array and I'm going to say, take the length, enemies.length, and subtract 1 and use that as the index with this bracket notation to actually, go get the element of the array. So we're combining some syntax here, right? Enemies.length just returns the length. We subtract 1 and use that number with bracket notation, and we're going to get the element that is represented at that position. So I'm doing 2 things at once here, and we can do that, and we get the master. That is the last the last one that we added in to that array. All right. Let's go through methods. Again, I'm going to give you a single slide that has a whole bunch of them listed. I've kind of got them categorized a little bit. Then we'll start going through them one by one. So if you want to locate an element within an array, it's just like when you want to locate a substring in a string, you use includes, and that'll return true or false. Index of will find the specific position for you with 0 indexing. If you want to create a new array, there are several ways to do that. The concat method will actually let you take 2 or more arrays and add them to an existing array. So you actually start with one array and then add more on. I'll cover it in a minute. Slice works like it does for strings. If you want to take just a subset of the elements out of that array and bring that back and maybe store it in a new array, you can use slice for that. You can split an array. No, let me restate that. Split is actually a string method. You could split a string and create an array. These are methods that create arrays, but you actually would call this on a string. I'll give you examples in a minute. Join, on the other hand, would actually create a string from an array. And then if you want to rearrange elements, there's a couple for those. We can reverse the elements, put them in the exact opposite order, and we can also sort them alphabetically. If you want to add or remove elements, there's a number of these. We'll do them all. Splice allows you to start in a specific location, a specific position, and then say, I want to remove this many. And then if you want to add anything in, you can also say, and I want to add these in at that same spot. Splice will do that for you. It's pretty versatile. So we'll do several examples to show different ways to use that. Pop will actually remove the very last element. Push will add one or more new elements to the end, which is a lot easier than having to go and calculate the last index or use the length or whatever. You can actually just do it this way. Shift will take something off the front end, and unshift, because somebody was feeling really creative that day that when they named these, is going to add items at the very beginning of the array instead of the end. So that's kind of an overview of all these different methods that we're going to introduce. So I'll come in here and start at the top. Let's talk about locating elements. Includes returns that Boolean true or false. Index of returns the number, the position where it's found, or it returns -1 if it can't find it. So we have sports. We have football, basketball, golf, and hockey. If I say sports includes golf, what do I get?
True.
True. Sports includes soccer.
False.
False. What about sports at index of hockey?
3.
Yeah, the index of hockey is 3. And what if we try to find the index of baseball?
-1. And
-1.
also, yeah, I had someone say undefined.
Oh, yeah. So that's the difference between using the method index of and using bracket notation. Bracket notation, if it doesn't exist, it'll give you undefined. If you use index of, it just gives you -1. So yeah, you definitely need to know the difference between that. Okay. So what about concatenating? We can actually put some arrays together and combine them. Actually, I want to wait and do this. I want to just do some quick live coding and then we'll come back. Okay. So just to demonstrate how this works with the includes and the index of again, let's say we have allies and we're checking to see if it includes Kate Stewart, which it does. We should expect this to return true, and it does. Similarly, we could go to enemies and try to find the index of the Weeping Angels. And we get 3 because they are, in fact, we've got it way up here. Yeah, they are at index 3. Okay. Now we'll talk about concatenating. So if you want to combine elements of multiple arrays and just put them all kind of with equal status as elements in a single array, you can do that. Use concat. So I've got Roy is red, orange, and yellow. G is green, and Biv is blue, indigo, and violet. If I want to create Roy G Biv, also known as the rainbow, how would I go about doing that with these 3? Anybody guessing?
I heard some. Say a little louder. Okay. Awesome. So we have Roy.concat array2, array3, basically.
Yeah, Roy.concat G, comma, biv. That'll take this one and then add those two in at the end. So then rainbow evaluates to red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, all equal inside a single array. So they're no longer in separate arrays. We've created one big array. Okay, let's do an example. We've got these companions, the 10th Doctor, 11th Doctor, 12th Doctor, and 13th Doctor. These are some of their companions. So I'm going to say, let companion list. We're going to combine some of them. All right. And I'm going to start with the 10th Doctor and concat companions 11, companions 12, and companions 13. And then if I print out our new companion list, I should see one big array with all of those names. And we do, we see them all at a single array. Okay, that's how concat works. Okay, what if you want to take a slice and just get some of the elements out from one position to another position? We can do that. It works just like it does with strings and characters. You give it the place you want to start, the very first character you want to include, and then the second number you pass in should be the index after the last element you want to include. And again, you can use just the first parameter there, the start parameter, if you just want to include everything to the end of the array. So I've got a hodgepodge of values here. We got some numbers, we've got some letters, some strings, and then we've got some Booleans. And I would like to split them out and separate them by their type. So if I want to do just the numbers, what would I pass in to hodgepodge.slice?
0 to 4.
Good. And what about letters?
5 to 6.
Oh,
That part, 5 to 7.
Got another try. 5 to 7.
okay. It's actually 4 to 6.
4.
Because remember, the very first one you want is actually should include the character that you want. So if we have 0, 1, 2, 3, this is index 4. And then the second one should be the index after the last one you want. If we want just A and B, we need to actually go to index 6. And another way to remember this is that if you subtract these two, it represents the number of elements you're expecting to have in your new array. So I expected that I would have 4 numbers, so I went from 0 to 4. Here, I need to start at index 4, and I'm expecting to have 2 characters, so I'm going to go from 4 to 6. If it helps you to think about it that way, that is another way to think about it. And so, of course, letters then becomes A and B. Last one, hodgepodge.slice. What can I do with that? Yeah, 6. And it'll just go from there to the end. No matter how many elements are left, it'll just take them all. And now we have, stored in these variables, we've gone and sliced, sub arrays, you might call them, out of this. And now each of these stores a new array with just those elements. Okay, let's do an example. We're going to get an array of just the middle of this list of companions. So the middle 3. So we're going to need to think about how we're going to do that. And I can create a variable to store it. So we have this new array we're creating, right? Middle companions. And we can say, let's go to the companion list and slice. And if I want just the middle 3, and we have a total of 11 here from index 0 to 10, then I need to have 4, I need to skip the first 4 and actually start with Rory, right? So that's going to be at index 4. And then I want 3 elements, so I'm going to go to index 7, which will be the one right after. the one we're wanting to include. Okay. Okay. I will log this and we get Rory, Clara, and Bill. Okay, so we got the middle three. That's how it's done. All right, what if you have a string that you would like to create an array from? You can split it out and you're going to use it, use a delimiter. So it'll create this new array by identifying all of the locations of that delimiter and dividing everything up along those lines. So the new elements of the array are the substrings that are in between the delimiters, but not including them. Those delimiters are going to disappear. And so you can do that to actually just split things like words from like a phrase. But if you had something and you just wanted every single character in the string to be its own element, you can still use split. You just pass it an empty string and it just says, okay, I'll just do one at a time. So I've got a catchphrase here. How would you like to do this? Which some of you may recognize that reference. Phrase array is catchphrase dot split. So we're going to go into the catchphrase. We're going to split it. If I wanted to get an array of all these words, what would my delimiter be?
Space.
Yeah, I could just split it out in the spaces, right? And that'll actually then give me an array now instead of a string. And it will be every single one of those words as separate strings within an array. Okay, one string to an array of strings. Good. Okay, what if I now go to the string that is at index 1 in this new array and split it out with by giving it an empty string as the delimiter? What's the result going to be?
Speak up a little louder. WOULD.
Yeah, I'd have an array that has all of the characters WOUL and D. I went to my new array and found the first element 0, 1. That's the string would, and then I used split again to break it up. Okay, so you can do this with strings however you need to do it. So I've got some Jadoon here, Joblo, Voblo, Soko, Rokro, Poto, which is not going to mean anything to you if you're not a Doctor Who fan, but I think it's hilarious. They always crack me up. So we're going to split it out. We're going to say let Jadoon JS array, give it a new name to make it clear we're no longer working with a string, we're working with an array, but otherwise it's the same content. And we're going to take the original string Jadoon JS and split it. And I'm going to split it on the spaces because I just want each of those separately. And so I can do that and just say, let's go take a look at our new array that we've created. Okay, good. So we've got all of these different, they're actually letters. And we have them all on separate lines. And I don't know if you're enough of a Doctor Who geek to know what that actually spells, but we're going to learn about creating a string from an array, and then we're going to do a little bit more with that variable. Okay, so join uses a connector. It will take an array and create a string that joins them all together. So it's the opposite of splitting, right? So this is one or more characters that will connect it within the new string. And if you want to join it all with no space at all, no characters in between, you just use join with an empty string, and then it'll do that for you. So I've got some mixed data here. Clock, 34, false, 0, trombone, very random. I want to join them all with double dashes. So I could actually take mixed data and say, take this array and join it with double dashes. That's going to be my connector. What do I now expect to see with double dash? And I'll just do this for you because it's awfully hard to articulate verbally. It's going to be all of these elements, right? But with double dashes in between, and it's all a single string now. We've created a string. And so similarly, we could have Ginny digits, and let's say we go and we want to just join it all together with no connectors. We can pass in a single string, and what are we going to get? Bonus points if you sing it.
I think everyone's saying 8675309.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, so we get the number, Jenny's number. Okay. I might be showing my age. Okay, so we are going to take this Jadoon array that we created, and now we're going to do a little bit of joining. There's this concept, though, I want to mention briefly called stringification. You stringify something. And if you try to stringify an array using something like string and just change it, to try to convert an array to a string with string like you've done before. Or there's another way you could try to do it. You could take the array and say toString, and these default functions here, both are going to give you some not necessarily great results. Let's run it. Yeah, in both cases, they will join them all together for you, but they just join them with commas with no spaces. Typically, that's not what anybody wants to read, right? It doesn't really read very well. So if you want to do it better, you can actually, clean that up a little bit. Maybe we want them as commas and spaces. We can do that. We can take the array we created and use join, and this time say, let's do comma and space both, and those two characters will be our connector. And now, when we print it, oh, we're already printing it. I was tripping for a second. Okay, let's run these. Okay, yeah, now we see it looks much better, right? We have both commas and spaces in there. So join helps us be very specific about how we want to do this. We could do it again and do it with something different. Let's say Jadoon, JavaScript array, join, and we'll use spaces and an asterisk to do this. And that comes out like that. Okay, so you can be creative. You can do it however you'd like. This does, by the way, spell JavaScript. That's what all of those letters are in the Jadoon language. Very slow way of speaking to spell everything out. Okay, let's talk about rearranging elements. We have a couple methods for this, reverse and sort. So reverse will flip the order, return a modified array for you. And but the difference is it doesn't just return it where you like store it in a new variable. It actually permanently alters the array. It mutates it. So you can get the new one back if you want to, but and use that value, but you can also just go do it and then it'll have been altered. And then later when you go to use it, it'll be in reverse. So let's say we have basketball, football, hockey, golf. Again, if we reverse them, we expect to see golf, hockey, football, and basketball, right? They're in the opposite order now. Okay. We can do a couple examples of this. Let's say we've got our enemies, which we may recall are, the Daleks and Cybermen and Bastion Narada and all that. Okay. So we're going to go reverse that. I'm just going to do it. I'm not even going to console log it. I'm just going to do it. All right. I can do it. And now we can prove that it mutated the array permanently by console logging this, and we should see them in reverse order. And there we go. Now we have the master first and the Daleks last. Okay. What about sorting? If we rearrange our elements to sort, it will alphabetize them and return that array, but it also permanently mutates it. So you can just go do it. And that is a very common way to do it. However, it treats numbers as if they were strings. So it only really looks at the first character, and that's how it decides to order it. So it's not a reliable way to sort numbers. We are going to learn how to do that when we get to functions. We're going to practice doing some different things that will help you learn how to sort numbers. So let's say we've got nuts: pecan, walnut, hazelnut, or if you're from the South, pecan. We sort them. Now we expect nuts to be hazelnut, pecan, walnut, because all we had to do was sort it, and now it's permanently mutated to be in that order. What about the numbers? We have 2, 6, 16, 22, etc. You may notice these are already in the correct order, but if I go and I sort them, suddenly they're not in numeric order anymore. we get 100, 16, 2, 22, etc., because it's just looking at them like they're strings and looking at those first characters. So just keep that in mind. It will not work as you expect for numbers. All right, real quick, we will do this. We will take the companion list and sort it. And then we can print that to show that it has been sorted and is no longer in the same order it used to be. Yeah, now we got Amy, Bill, Clara, Donna, all the way down to Yasmin. All right, who has questions about the methods I've done so far?
I'm seeing some thumbs up.
You guys good? Okay,
Yep. More thumbs up.
great. All right, I lost my mouse. There it is. Okay. What if you want to add or remove elements? You remember from the slide that I had, the list of all these things. There's like 5 different ones we're going to look at. The first ones we'll look at are pop and push. So this is all of the things that will remove elements at the end of the array. So we're going to kind of group these by where it is that they're removing or adding them. Pop will remove that last element. It also returns that element. If you need the value of that element while you're doing it, it will return it for you. But it also will mutate the array, and it's permanently changed. Push lets you add one or more elements to the end of the array. And so let's say we have clothing, shirt, pants, dress, socks, and I decide to create a new element to store the return value when I do clothing.pop. What is the value of last element going to be?
Socks.
Socks, yeah. And now what is clothing going to be?
Shirt, pants, dress.
Shirt, pants, dress. Okay, good. What if I now say I want to push belt, hat, shoes? What is clothing going to be?
Is that okay? Belt, hat, shoes, socks. I think was one answer I got. Shirt, hat, pants. Shirt, pants.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, we're on
that.
the right track. Okay. Shirt, pants, dress, belt, hat, shoes. Yeah. So both of these are dealing with the end of the array. So in this case, we removed something from the end of the array and we were left with just the 3. But now that we take that new mutated array and we add on 3 more at the end, they stay at the beginning, and then belt, hat, and shoes just get tacked on to the very end. Okay, that's pop and push. We can do a couple examples of this. Let's say we want to go and restore the, go and store the very last ally. We're going to remove it from the list, but we also want that ally to be stored. So I'm going to say allies.pop to go get our list of allies and take off the very last one. And then I can console log last ally, and it's going to show us just that one element. But then I can also console log the original array we were removing it from, and we'll see that it has been removed. Okay, so Queen Victoria was that last ally, and it's been removed, and now we only have these 3. What if we want to add that name back? We can totally do that. We can just say allies push and add in last ally. And now when we go to check allies, we should see that Queen Victoria is back in her rightful place, and she is. Okay, that's the end of the array. Now let's talk about the beginning of the array. We can do this at the beginning. Shift will actually mutate the array by removing the very first element. It's the opposite of pop in that sense. It's the other end. Shift has a return value. It will give you that element that was removed, but it mutates it. So unshift will actually let you add elements at the beginning. So we're going to start with that same array we started with last time. We're going to reset it back to shirts, pants, dress, socks. Start from the beginning. What's the first element? I can say clothing.shift, and I'm going to get what?
Shirt.
Yeah. And if I say, if I look at clothing now, I'm just going to have what?
Pants, dress, socks.
Pants, dress, socks. Okay. Now I unshift belt, hat, and shoes, and I get
Belt, hat, shoes, pants, dress, socks.
good. Yep. So you guys got the idea there. If you're adding it to the beginning, it gets inserted here at the very beginning in front of whatever was there before. Okay. So we'll do a quick example. At the very beginning of the enemies, I could remove that. I could say, let first enemy, which I think we put that in reverse order or something. So now it's going to be what used to be the last enemy. And I'll console log it. And I will also console log enemies to show that it has been mutated. All right, the master was removed. Weeping Angels and Vashanrata, Cybermen, and Daleks are all that's left. Okay. We want to add that one back. We can do that with, oops, enemies. With unshift, the opposite of shifting, and just put first enemy back. And now we should see the master as the very first element again. And there we go. All right. So that's beginning and end. What if you wanted to remove something right in the middle of an array somewhere? We can do that. We can use this method called splice, and it has 3 or more potential parameters is the word I'm looking for. Parameters here. Index, amount to remove, item 1, item 2. So the way this works is you start out by giving it the index where it should insert or remove. So what do you want, that to be there or to not be there? And then you give it the amount to remove. So that's not an index. The amount is literally the number of elements that you want to remove at that point. And then if you want to keep going with parameters, you can also add items in that could then be inserted at that same location where that thing that was removed used to be. There are ways to go about using these in different combinations. So let's look at that. And if you want to remove everything from like one spot to the end, you can do that with just giving it the index, the very first one. So let's practice this. We have clothing. We're back to reset to shirt, pants, dress, socks. What if we splice at index 2 and remove one item? What am I going to get?
Shirt, pants, socks.
Good. Shirts, pants, socks. We went to index 2 and we said remove 1. So we got rid of the dress and we didn't insert anything. What if I say clothing splice 1, 0, shoes, hat? What do I now expect to see for clothing?
Shirt, shoes, hat. You said pants, socks.
Good. Shirt, shoes, hat, pants, socks. So just to review that, we went to index 1, which was pants. And we said, we don't want to remove anything. Let's just give it a 0. We don't actually intend to remove anything, but we do want to add some things in right here in the middle. So that means that now at index 1, shoes is going to be there plus hat. And then anything that was after that now gets just, it's still tacked on at the end there. What if I just splice at index 3?
Shirt, shoes, hat.
Shirt, shoes, hat. Yeah. If you just use that index, it's just going to remove everything from that index to the end. And then you're just left with whatever was at the beginning. Okay, good. Couple examples here. We want to remove Harriet Jones from the allies array because let's be real, sometimes she was an ally and sometimes she wasn't. So I'm going to say index of HJ because we need to find her first. Right? We don't really know how to tell it where to go unless we can find her. So we're going to go find the index of Harriet Jones using index of. We'll store that and then use it. So I'm going to go and splice and I'm going to say go to index of Harriet Jones and remove one element. I just want to remove her. And I don't want to add anything in, so I'm not going to put anything after that. Now, if we go check allies, we'll see that Harriet Jones has been removed. Okay, let's say we add in Wilfred Mott. We can do that with Splice as well. I can go to Splice and say, I just want to go to at index 3. And it just says somewhere in the middle, so I'm just choosing index 3. And which I realize now is, yeah, it's in the middle, roughly. But I'm not removing anything, so I'm going to say there's 0 things to remove. And now here's the element that I would like you to add in at that spot. Okay, we will console log allies. Okay. There we go. Now we have Wilfred Mott added on at the very end, not in the middle. Yeah, okay. I probably should have chosen something smaller than 3, right? If we did it at 1 and we run it again, lost my terminal, there we go. Yeah, now we see him added in between Captain Jack and Kate. Okay. So I'm method chaining real fast. Got 11 minutes to get through a couple more topics here. So one line of code, you can do a number of changes in a single line of code if you chain your methods. So these get executed sequentially from left to right. So you're going to keep mutating your array, or in some cases, the string. Maybe you're converting back and forth between strings and arrays. And you're going to do that, whatever order you want to do it in, that's the order you should put them in and chain them on. So I have these letters that are kind of mixed up. They're not all the same case. I would like to make it to where I finally have them all sorted out in the same case. So I can do that. I can say, let's take the sorted, I'm going to create a new variable, sorted caps, and I'm going to take those letters, and that's a string. I'm going to change it to uppercase. Then I'm going to split it into an array so that I can sort it, because sort is an array method. I can't use it on a string, but I also can't use 2 uppercase on an array, right? I have to use that on a string. So you have to think about what order to do these in that makes sense, because some methods work on strings, some methods work on arrays, only one or the other. So first I'll change it to uppercase, then I'll split it out into an array where each character is its own element, and then I'll sort those so they're in alphabetical order. Once I do that, what should I see?
A, C, D, E, all caps.
Okay. As a string or as an array?
As an array.
As an array. We have not changed it back to a string, right? Right now we've split it and we sorted it, but it is actually still an array. So this is going to be an important thing to keep track of. If it helps you, you could always name your variables with like str or arr on the end, so it helps you keep track. But yeah, sorted caps is an array. So if I want to join all 5 letters together, and you'll notice we're missing a B, right? I can do that. I can say sorted caps dot splice. I'm going to use my array method splice, go to index 1, remove none, and then add in B. And then once that's done, I can go ahead and just join it all together with spaces. And now, what should I see?
A, B, C, D, E, all caps as a string.
Separated by spaces, yes. Because I used that as my connector with join. Right. So this is method chaining, where you just do a whole bunch of things in one line. It makes nice, easy, clean, readable code. And you don't have to keep like modifying one line after another, like you saw me do previously. Okay, so let's do an example of this. We've got the TARDIS. Right now it's lowercase, it's a single word, there are no periods. We need to fix it so that it's all caps and has periods after all of them. And so we can do that. So the steps we're going to need to take, we have a number of things we need to do. This may or may not be the order in which to do them. We need to split the string into an array of characters if we want to be able to join them back together with those periods, right? We also need to make them all uppercase. We can't do that when it's an array. We have to do that when it's a string. So I'm going to just reassign TARDIS to its original value, which means I'm going to take it from a string to an array and back to a string, all in the same line. I'm going to first make it uppercase while it's still a string. And then I'm going to split it on each character individually, and then I'll join it back together, but I'm going to do it with periods. And the one thing that's missing from this, if we console log TARDIS right now, is, of course, we use join. Join only puts it between characters. It doesn't put it after. So if we actually want that last period, we're going to need to come up here after our method chaining and just tack on. We can just use concatenation, that's fine, and just tack on one last period. And now when we run it again, we see that it has its final period. So, these string methods can help you accomplish what it is you're looking for. You just have to know what order to do them in. So one last one, we're going to start with the array of enemies and print a single string that lists the enemies in reverse alphabetical order. And we're going to separate them by commas and spaces so they look like a nice list. So we're going to have to sort it. We're going to have to reverse it. Those both have to be done while it's an array. Then we're going to join with that connector comma space. So let's just do that. And if I want to do it this way, I mean, do I reverse it first or do I sort it first? Which am I going to need to do? Any guesses?
Sort first.
Yeah, because I need to have them in alphabetical order before I can put them in reverse alphabetical order. Good. So I'm going to reverse it, and then I'll join it together and create my string and use a comma and a space as the connector. And I am, and I need to close my console log here. There we go. And now I'm just printing the result of this, because remember I said that you can do something like this and just get that return value, but we haven't stored it as anything. So if we go back to enemies and check it, it's still going to be, that's actually a very interesting thing. What do you think is going to happen with enemies here? If I log enemies. So it's going to be reverse sorted, and it's permanently that way now, because even though we did this all in one line and all we did was log the result of that string, calling this sorts it. Calling this one puts it in reverse order, and it mutates that array regardless. So now that we go to enemies, it has been changed. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. Last topic is multidimensional arrays. We are going to go a little bit over time, just a tiny, tiny bit. So sorry about that, but I want to get through this because you're going to need it for an upcoming studio when you do loops. Okay, so arrays of arrays. What is this concept? You can have arrays that have elements that are also arrays. And if you want to access the data, we have this concept called double bracket notation. So you work your way from the outside, the ultimate array, to the inside where the smaller arrays are. And so I have this, data that's got 3 arrays as its elements. It's got an array that has element A and element B. It has another array, 1, 2, 3, and a third one, apple, banana. If I go from outside to inside and I go data at index 2 at index 1, what's the result going to be?
Banana.
Something wonky is happening with my stuff. Yes, banana. Okay, I don't know what just happened there, but okay. Yes, it's banana. Good. Because we went 0, 1, 2. We're looking, pay attention to these commas outside here, right? Each of these arrays is a separate element, right? So the commas that they're separating them show you this is 1 or 0, 1, and 2. So we're going to position 2 in data. And then inside that array, we're going to position 1, 0, 1. And that's how we get to banana. So again, the way you speak this aloud is data at index 2 at index 1 with bracket notation. Okay. So let's break this down a little bit further. We have first three is ABC, last three is XYZ. And then let's say I create a new array and I put first three in position 0 and last three at position 1. Let's go through and say, okay, first of all, what is data going to look like, right? We're actually going to expect an array, but it's going to be an array of arrays. It's going to hold both of these arrays as individual elements. So what if I went to data 0, data at index 0, what would I see?
The array ABC.
Perfect. And similarly, if I go to data at index 1, I see the array XYZ. So that's step 1, is considering where you're going from the outside. Then when you start moving inside here, what would we have if we went to data at index 0 at index 1?
B.
Good. How about data at index 1 at index 2?
Z.
Good. Okay. I want to access Y. What bracket notation do I use for that?
1 1.
Oh, I had one more. Sorry about that. Wednesday. Okay. Data. Yeah. Data at index 1 at index 1. Good. What about C?
0 2.
Data at index 0 at index 2. Excellent. Okay, so you guys are getting the picture. Go work for your way from the outside in. Okay. We're going to put all of those arrays of companions. You remember we used the arrays of companions before, we concatenated them together to where every single one of the companions was just in one big array. Now we're going to do it where we maintain their original arrays, but we put all of those in an array. So I'll say let all companions equal. And then I'm going to create companions 10, companions 11, companions 12, and companions 13. I could do all this on one line, but it's getting long enough. I'm going to split it out on separate lines so it's a little easier to read. Okay. I can print this to just so we can see how it turned out. Okay, so we have an array, and then inside that array, every element is also an array that has individual strings as its element, as their elements. Okay, we want to print Donna's name using bracket notation, accessing it from all companions and not from companions 10. How would I do that?
Carrie, hold on. We're having some technical difficulties here.
Okay,
Yeah, you're cutting in and out a bit.
all right, so we're going to go to Donna's name. She's in the first array, so that's at index 0. And she within that array is at index 2, right? We're almost there, guys. Okay. So we see Donna. Good. We're gonna do the same thing with Clara. How would I find Clara?
Index 2, and then index 0.
Good. Yeah, perfect. All right. There we go. All right, that's double bracket notation with nested arrays, multi-dimensional arrays. Okay, any last questions? I know we're a little bit over time, but I'll take them if you got them.
I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay. So I have practice on strings and arrays. There's actually quite a lot. There's way more than this. There's like 8 of them or something. So if you want lots of extra practice on strings and arrays, you can go to my website and just do a topical search on strings and arrays and they'll all pop up. I also have prep exercises for graded assignment 1, my favorite things in Haunted House. These were like tutorials that like have a big program that you create that puts it all together. And I did these as a TA. As like a live tutorial on Saturdays. And so there's video of this, of me walking through it. And then you have links to starter code and all that kind of stuff. And you can get to that from the website as well. Just look for the stuff that's related to graded assignment 1. Because you now know everything that you need to know to do at least the first part of graded assignment 1 that you're going to work on tomorrow. And so you should be able to do favorite things at this point. Haunted house, you're going to need loops for. So you'll have to wait until Monday's class to do that. All right, tomorrow's the graded assignment number 1 intro and a work day. I will offer an instructor review right after our afternoon check-in after lunch. If anyone wants to come to that, please use the channel review requests in Discord to tell me what it is that you'd like me to review, and then I could kind of plan ahead a little bit. We'll do loops on Monday, functions on Tuesday, and then Wednesday you'll have another graded assignment workday so that you can work on part 2 of the graded assignment. All right, today's studio after lunch will be strings and arrays. You're going to practice string manipulation, array and string conversion, and then you'll even have a bonus mission with multidimensional arrays. So again, I do have a studio review recording. Ignore what that says about announcements. Go to Canvas for that. I need to update my slides. Because we don't use Slack anymore. We use Discord now. So yeah, so that's your studio. Your IAs will get you oriented past that.